Thank you for being here. I wasn't going to ask a question about energy, but Senator Reid's question and your response to it, I feel like I have to drill down a little bit, no pun intended. But within hours of the president being endorsed, he signed an order to pull the permit for the XL pipeline. We talk about a shortage of truckers and transportation, but this administration sent a very clear message on day one that the infrastructure that energy production requires for those capital expenditures and expanded drilling in the United States to make sense from a business perspective, sent a very clear message before the sunset on the first day of his presidency that that wasn't going to be a priority of this administration. It seems to me that we can attribute some of the increase in energy to what's going on in Ukraine. But isn't it rational to also say that the posture of this administration and the message that they've sent for domestic energy production is also another factor in rising energy prices?
So, Senator, I think with respect to the Keystone Pipeline, this is something, it doesn't really have anything to do with the supply of oil. And it's something that would be years.
What it has to do is with the, excuse me, Madam Secretary, because I do want to get to some of the questions, but it has to do with the underlying cost and the long-term certainty that an industry needs before they're going to make capital expenditure investments. We can go in, and I don't expect you to answer this question, but I do think it's something that we all have to be intellectually honest about. More than 9,000 permits that the administration supposedly says opens the doors to energy exploration here, only about half of them are viable, and even those are in question because of other policies that the administration have taken on actually authorizing the use of it. We know within a week of the administration being in office, we've seen the correspondence out to supervisors among the states saying that you can't make decisions to move forward with extraction. That's something that has to go through the White House. I don't expect you to get into that, but I do believe that we have to understand there's a reason for energy prices going up, and only a portion of which can be attributed to the geopolitical situation that we're in right now.
Senator,
I want to ask, go ahead.
You know, I feel with the real moral of the situation we face is that as long as we are as dependent as we are on fossil fuels in our energy supply, that we will always face vulnerabilities from the decisions of Russia or other countries. We face geopolitical risk. And what we need to do is
Secretary Yellen,
we need a transition to renewables.
Secretary Yellen, if I could get you to yield for a minute, if I can get you to yield for a minute, you can also see the risk of going too soon. That's why we have European nations that are struggling to figure out, because they went so far that they actually stopped drilling. I'll give you a classic example in Germany. They have energy resources in Germany. They shut them down, and they just replaced their fossil fuels with fossil fuels coming from Russia. So if we don't get the transition right, I've supported renewables for years. That's why we have a prospering solar economy in North Carolina. But if we don't get it right, and we're not extracting natural gas, for example, that's a fraction of the carbon footprint, we're expediting a transition and putting ourselves at risk in the process. But I want to move on to something that is in your lanes. One question I have, with the help of the chairman and in collaboration with Senator Tester, we were able to get the LIBOR transition legislation passed. How is the implementation going?
I think that's very helpful, and really appreciate Congress doing that. We're in a transition phase, and we see that banks are now moving off LIBOR as they've been required to do, with a clear end date to when it's going to be produced. And I think they're making good progress in transitioning to SOFR. I'd say the progress is a little bit less good when it comes to loan products. That the progress has been very good on derivatives. We do think it's important that banks choose indices that are robust based on strong data we have some concerns that we mention in the FSOC report over credit-related indices that banks may use, but generally I'd say the transition is going well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. Senator Warren from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the crash of 2008, we saw how financial institutions that were not banks could be big enough and risky enough to bring down our whole economy. It was the collapse of a